Okay, let's see what we got going here. Okay. Okay. It's telling me that I'm doing a test broadcast on Facebook. Don't know what that's all about. Should be streaming live on YouTube. And we're going to fire up the TikTok machine right now. And hopefully we get going here. So, should have done this before. All right. Let's see how she works today. Looks like we've actually got sound. Doesn't look like we're dropping a ton of frames, so that looks great. Everything looks like it's working just fine. Okay, why does it ask me if I want it? Okay, doesn't matter. All right, so let's pull up the stories and get to work here. Let me pull this thing up here. For those of you wondering, yes, it's the first time I've used this newfangled technology. Yes, I've been working on weeks to get set up. I have been on this Donald Trump thing like most people, but probably from a little bit different perspective. And I'm just looking at this from the perspective of like, if I go in here and I say this whole trial, this whole thing, this whole bit we did with Donald Trump was a terrible mistake. And people will say, well, what? Just because he used to be the president of the United States, whatever the case may be, we are going to excuse his behavior. He can do whatever he wants. We don't hold political people accountable for their actions, whatever the case may be. I'm just going to read. This is Simon Tisdale from The Guardian writes this article, and I think it's a pretty interesting article because he actually gets to the heart of the matter with this whole Trump bit. As Americans stared at their TV screens early on Thursday evening, listening to 34 Trump guilty court verdicts rolling out one by one amid the former president's histrionic cries the trial was rigged, an immediate thought was, what on earth happens now? The point of that is that this is absolutely 100% uncharted territory. And why is that important as it relates to Donald Trump and the United States and all the things that we're looking at here? It matters because why did we do this? What was the purpose of doing this? This is an unprecedented thing we're doing. This is absolutely unprecedented. We've never done anything like this before. And so I look at what we did, and I look at what Trump has now been found guilty of, and I'm not as concerned, honestly, about what his crime was. I'm more concerned about this. The country and the world are witnessing an unbelievable moment in American history. But he quickly followed up with a health warning. For those wondering about the political consequences, the short answer is nobody has any idea, period. So what does this mean to me? I'm just wondering, was it worth it? I look at all of our presidents in history, and I'm 48 years old, so I don't go back terribly far. I look at Bill Clinton's presidency, and I think how many women came out and accused him of some pretty horrible things that got swept under the rug. He had a public settlement with Paula Jones, but he was accused of some pretty horrific things by a lot of women. No trial, no hearing, nothing happened. I look at George W. Bush, and I look at a president who lied to get us into Iraq. I look at a president who it's almost impossible to make an argument that George W. Bush didn't commit war crimes. Lied to get us in. Don't know what his motivations exactly were, whether it's oil, whether it's, avenging daddy, whatever his reasons were for getting us involved in that conflict. War crimes? Did he see the inside of a courtroom? Was there a trial? Was he impeached? Were there any consequences for what George W. Bush did? Nope. Barack Obama literally assassinated an American citizen without due process, not on a battlefield. Literally assassinated an American citizen without due process. Killed 3 other American citizens without due process in that singular drone strike. This is an intentional thing. This was a targeted killing. American citizens, murder. That's flat out killed American citizens without due process, not in the midst of battle, as an assassination. No trial, Never saw the inside of a courtroom. Nothing. Donald Trump paid a porn star some hush money to not reveal an affair. This is the thing. This is where we're going to break the precedent of bringing a president into a courtroom and turning him into a felon. And I'm just wondering, what are the consequences of this going to be for the rest of the country? What are the consequences of this, and was it actually worth it? To me, I don't care. I'm not a Trump supporter. I've never voted for Donald Trump. I'm not going to vote for him in the next election. Although I have said if he gets in jail, if he's actually in prison, I might vote for him. But I'm not going to vote for him. I didn't vote for him the other two times. I'm not going to vote for him this time. I'm not a Trump supporter, which is what immediately I get accused of being, because if you try and look at this through anything other than red team, blue team, good guy, bad guy, if you try and look at this in any other way, you are automatically, you must be on the other side. You must be one of his supporters. You must be MAGA. You must be this. You must be that. Okay, if that's how we want to view the world, if that's how we want to chop things up, I'm saying the phrase uncharted territory. The phrase uncharted territory is already suffering serious overuse. Trump has signaled his intention to appeal. The process could stretch beyond the election day on 5 November. Meanwhile, the convicted man remains at large. They make it sound like he's the convicted man. One of the many answers is that, as a citizen of Florida and now a felon, he may be banned from voting. It's certain that Trump will attempt to weaponize the verdict because he did the entire Manhattan prosecution. But he's not going to have to weaponize it. I think there's a lot of people who are unhappy that this was the route our Department of Justice took. And let's just take a look here. Donald Trump has a litany of fundraising events scheduled in the coming weeks. The end of his criminal trial marks the beginning of a period of enhanced campaigning. Yeah, because he can finally leave New York. Now his criminal trial is wrapped up with the guilty verdict. Former President Trump is plowing ahead with a packed schedule of fundraising events. The donations started coming in within moments of the guilty verdict. Trump campaign aides said late Thursday that it was unclear exactly how much the campaign had raised that day from small dollar donors, but it was enough that the campaign's donation website crashed intermittently. While Trump's small dollar donors mobilized amid new campaign ads. Small dollar donors, by the way, is another way of saying grassroots. You don't have to like it. It's just another way of saying grassroots. While Trump's small dollar donors mobilized amid new campaign ads labeling the former president a political prisoner, the candidate himself is gearing up to raise big money. Now, somewhere in here, I think he hit a number. The numbers I've seen from today were somewhere in the $54 plus million that he's raised since this has happened. I mean, come on. Was it worth it? There's a pretty good chance that this is going to be the next president of the United States. And I don't know. So let's see here. So anyway, I'm watching my Facebook feed here. It says end test broadcast. I don't know why it's saying end test broadcast. It should be broadcasting, but I'm not 100% sure what's going on. It's my first time running this, so I'm just going to get through it and see what happens. What else do we got here? Oh my God! So something with a little lighter note for the climate alarmist in you and the climate alarmist in your family. 12%. Listen now. 12% of the population of Phoenix, Arizona, will die of extreme heat in the 2030s. 654 people died from extreme heat in 2023. Pretty bad, but that's not the stat to look at. It is the fact that death levels went up a whopping 700% in a decade. So get the calculator out, because the growth rate, the growth curve of this isn't going to change. It's going to keep growing at the exact same rate indefinitely until it hits 4,500 people dying a year from that thing. Two takeaways. The math does not lie. Well, it might be exaggerating a little bit. Phoenix will experience social collapse at some point in the 2030s, along with the rest of the world's cities and the new death zones of the planet. This is not climate alarmists at all. This is clearly somebody who's well-balanced, completely in control of his faculties. People will not believe this because they do not get exponential growth. I don't think he understands exponential growth. Of course, you could say that this is an exaggeration because the government will respond with adaptation measures. No. Growth, these kinds of things aren't linear in nature, first of all. So you're not going to get a growth line that moves. It's not going to move in a straight line. That's not how these things work. So I think that's interesting. Yes, of course, there would be adaptation measures. Of course, if the heat were so bad that it was literally killing thousands of people a year, people would probably leave Phoenix. But that's a whole nother. Um, God, read the article and note that protection for outdoor workers is being brought in the northern states, but is blocked in the more vulnerable states. Why is this? Because the fascistic tendency hates life and would rather idealize death. If you have better explanation, then please. What in the world is this unhinged? I got to click on this article from The Guardian. Millions in U.S. face extreme heat threat as experts urge better protections. Probably of above normal temperatures from June to August of 2024. Let's see. Billions of Americans face the threat of dangerous heat waves. Look, okay, what's the solution? We talk about climate change. It's like this constant conversation about climate change. And I'm just trying to figure out what is it exactly that they'd like to see us do. There's no great mediation strategy for the reduction of carbon other than economic policies and energy policies that are going to lead to the death of. You want to talk about a death toll? Let's take a bunch of energy offline and see how that works. Let's increase the cost of energy by 20% and see what that does for people. So the idea that there's horrible things in it. Look, there's two outcomes here. We can bring affordable energy online like nuclear power, natural gas, things that are far cleaner, or we can keep farting around with solar panels and wind power and things like that and keep making energy more expensive. We can keep refusing to build oil refineries here and sending our oil to China. We could do all these dumb policy things that make energy more expensive, that make food more expensive, that cause inflation, that do all these terrible things, or we can actually address the problem head on. But this alarmism, see, here's the problem with a guy. This is Roger Hallam. I don't know who he is. He's got a blue check mark, so it must be important. Co-founder of the Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil. He doesn't sound like unhinged at all. This kind of alarmism, it just eliminates any hope that we have of having some kind of a rational discussion about real solutions when it comes to energy policy. And I think that's the problem I have with it is, can we just talk about sensible policy? There's alarmists on one side. You have this tiny group of like reasonable people who get some press when it comes to saying things like, hey, we need to look at nuclear. We need to look at clean energy. Maybe wind and solar aren't quite ready for prime time. Let's solve this problem. Then you have the other side of this. It's like nothing's happening. There's no problem here. But that's not going to lead us to a productive conversation. I think what I'm trying to say is that there's not a lot of productive conversation around the climate issue because you have this isn't a thing that's happening, people on one side, and everybody's going to be dead in 10 years on the other side. And so there's no middle ground left for conversation about the actual issue, and so that's why you don't make any progress. So it's nonsense like this. And so let's take a look at some of by the end of the 21st century, as many as 3 to 6 billion people may find themselves outside Earth's livable regions. What is he talking about? Here's a great no further comment needed. Here's a great chart on what this kind of growth rate would look like. Present and its projected growth, because if the growth stays on a straight line, you end up with the internet's undefeated. The probability of that occurring tends towards zero. As usual, you are peddling alarmist climate propaganda based on obscenely distorted modeling. And then here we go. This is of the 654 that died from extreme heat. Did they die in a place where there was extreme heat, or did they die specifically because of the heat? So that's the question you got to ask yourself, right? It's like, I'm not a climate denier. I'm just saying we need to have a productive conversation around it. And saying that we're going to have thousands of people dying just from extreme heat in just a matter of a few years is not going to lead to any kind of productive, intelligent conversation surrounding climate change. So it just seems like kind of a silly thing to bring up. Seems like not the brightest tweet, but let's go to this guy's Twitter page. Let me just see. He looks a little like Sean Connery. Doesn't he look a little like Sean Connery? He looks a little like Sean Connery to me. Let's see. The situation is beyond thousands of millions of climate refugees, economic collapse, and human extinction. Only mass civil resistance can stop the top one global 1% imposing mass deaths. This guy is unhinged. Holy buckets. Oh my God. What will you say when your grandchildren ask if you resisted? If long said we're at risk of losing essential. Well, this guy is, wow. All right, so that tweet is not out of character. It's not somebody who's like usually pretty buckled up and then randomly threw out a crazy tweet. This guy is genuinely unhinged. So Roger Hallam, I might have to, you know what? Honestly, I might just have to follow this guy. This might, on a day when you're running low on content, this might be a guy you want to read about. Unprecedented floods, record-breaking temperatures. You know what always gets me about the record-breaking temperatures? We always hear about record-breaking temperatures, and it's like, do people understand that in terms of the history of the planet, we've been recording temperatures for like a nanosecond? Like record-breaking, it's never been this hot before in recorded history. They say that like that's the quiet part because our recorded history represents like a half of a nanosecond of the Earth's history. It's insane. But it's fun stuff. Here's a good one. California's $20 fast food minimum wage law is already having disastrous unintended consequences. I'm going to tell you what makes me angry about this one. What makes me angry about this one, let me bring this up on the other. What makes me angry about this one is there's no scenario. There's no deniability here. If you pass this minimum law, this minimum requirement as it pertains to like fast food workers, then you are absolutely going to have this problem. This is like it doesn't take a PhD in economics to go, if you raise the price of labor significantly, you'll have less workers. That's what's going to happen, and that's of course exactly what did happen. And what kills me about this is when I've talked about this and the commentary I've seen on all these people losing their jobs in California because of this incredibly stupid policy, it's, hey, if they can't afford to pay these workers a fair wage, they shouldn't be in business. And I can't even grasp the ego of saying, I've created nothing. First of all, moving my camera around a little bit. I've created nothing in my life. I've created nothing of value. I've never created a job. But I have no problem throwing other people out of work because I don't believe that they should be allowed to exchange their time for a wage that I find too low. What an insanely arrogant position to take, that it is our role to determine what other people should be allowed to exchange their wages for. It just drives me nuts. So California loses nearly 10,000 fast food jobs after $20 minimum wage signed last fall. And I wonder how many young people were thrown out of work because we're going to do this great thing. We're going to help these people who are just too stupid to go find better employment. These clearly are all 40-somethings trying to feed a family. I mean, this is ridiculous stuff. Essentially, we're blocking. You wonder why you have so many dispossessed young people in this country. And it's like you have a political party that's hell-bent on throwing young people out of the... This is it. This is the first step of getting into the workforce, learning how to create something for yourself, learning how to support yourself, learning what it takes to start building a career. All those skills are learned like in your first couple, 2-3 jobs. That's where that skill set comes from. And we're throwing young people out of the workforce intentionally because we don't like that they're not getting paid what we, these liberal people, think they should be getting paid. It's not a matter of it's not a matter of what is happening right now? I think I might have just lost Facebook. It's not a matter of I completely lost my train of thought. Shouldn't be messing around with the software while I'm doing this stuff. It's not a matter of you know, older people, people trapped in the workplace. We're not in coal towns or any of this nonsense anymore. This is literally realistic. So what they do is they make up this artificial term called livable wage. Well, this is what's a livable wage. It has nothing to do with living. First of all, it's zero to do with it, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't. Based on what? Based on what makes a livable wage a livable wage? Nobody knows. Nobody wants to define it because it's impossible to knock down. People who are in fast food work tend to be young people, entry-level people. A lot of them aren't supporting themselves. A lot of them have multiple roommates. And a bunch of people are like, you shouldn't have these jobs. We've decided you shouldn't have these jobs. And they're proud. They are literally proud of throwing people out of the workforce. It's the dumbest, most arrogant thing that could possibly. This is why Gavin Newsom is not. Look, when Joe Biden somehow doesn't make it to November, which is what I think is going to happen. I don't know how he makes it to November, but let's set that aside for a second. When Joe Biden doesn't make it to November, that's why Gavin Newsom can't be the guy. They don't want to put California's freaking policies under a national spotlight and say this is what's going to be good for the rest of the country. It's the most insane. There's a reason people are fleeing the state of California as fast as they possibly can. It's just insane what's going on out there. But it's the ego of it. For me, it's the arrogance of saying, I will determine what you are allowed to exchange your time for. You are clearly, but this is the whole thing. It's like the Kathy Hochul thing from the other day, where Kathy Hochul's like, young black people in the Bronx don't even know what the word computer is. It's that arrogance of, these people are far too stupid to manage their own lives, so we'll manage it for them. So the whole thing is just arrogant and stupid, and it comes from a place of like, I don't even know. It's like that. It's the white suburban liberal, like, we've never met any of these people, but we really think we should be the ones making decisions in regards to how they're living their lives. That's 100% how it comes off anyway. So just, it's sad to me. It's unfortunate. It's sad that this is the kind of thing that's going on, but hey, what are you going to do? This is what they want. So they keep voting for it out there. Probably not the people who are getting thrown out of work, but these people keep voting for it, and I don't know, they love it. Can't eat it on up, I guess. So that was that one. What's the point of the race if you don't have a job? Right? So that's the Pizza Hut lays off all these people. It's like, I want you to go and talk to that guy and tell him, look, I did this for your own good because you weren't making a livable wage. You're better off making no wage. I mean, it's insane. So, anyway, so that's the Trump story. We're done with that. I'm kind of wrapped up. I think what I'll do here is I might call this one and go and see what this all looked like. Guys, I've been working on trying to get this stream going so that could be on multiple platforms for like weeks. I built the machine. I upgraded my internet connection. And it looks like it's working pretty good. But let me respond to I'll read some of the comments that are come across on TikTok. Immigrants are working fast food. Pro low minimum wage. I'm pro no minimum wage. So Johnny Lowe asks if I'm pro a low minimum wage. I'm pro a no minimum wage because the real minimum wage, as a bunch of people in California just discovered for themselves, the actual minimum wage is $0. You get that? Once the cost of labor exceeds what the employer deems it is worthy, then you just don't have a job. So a bunch of people's low minimum wage went all the way down to $0. That's the actual minimum wage. So Mikey says saying that people shouldn't be able to advocate for their own wage is arrogant, and for their own wage is arrogant, is crazy. I don't know what you mean by that, but if the government mandates what a wage should be, that takes the power to negotiate my own wage out of my hands and allows the government to set that standard. That is not an individual person advocating for their wages. Just kind of as an aside, this is a lie. Every fast food joint has hiring signs, $24 for cashier at Panda Express. Oh, so these fast food, so it's a whole lie. Michael says it's a lie. Every fast food joint has hiring signs, $24 an hour for a cashier at Panda Express. So here's an interesting perspective. Panda Express, where I live, would never pay $24 an hour. So, like, if you live in a very high cost of living place, like say you live in LA, or you're in I don't know what's real expensive in California, Orange County, LA, that kind of an area. Yep, Panda Express in that area might pay $24 an hour, but not everything. So this is part of the problem with big city liberals is like everything in the world is exactly like it is right here, and that's not the case. So you pass a statewide minimum wage based on LA. Well, what does that do to somebody out in El Cajon or one of these other small towns way further outside of these very expensive metro? Those are the places that this hurts because big city liberals think the entire world is exactly like the big city that they live in, and the policies that they need, and maybe their policies are good, I don't think they are, but maybe they are for people living in the city, don't necessarily work in all the other places. But if you've never been outside of your block, if you've never been further than the 7-Eleven up the road, then you don't know what the rest of the world functions like. So you're like, yes, let's jam these policies down everybody else's throats. So that's just another comment that came in. Getting a little commentary on the TikTok. I say as a nothing on the old Facebook here, but hey, who knows? It's my first one. I don't even know if the stream's up, to be honest with you. 1.4 megs bit rate, stream metrics, not bad, not bad. 25 minutes, not bad. So that's about all I've got, to be honest with you. I really wanted to just get this test stream out, see how it worked. I recorded it so I could chop it up later, and we'll just see how this all went. I'm kind of excited. It looks like everything worked like as good as it has ever freaking worked, by the way. So I'm very excited about it. For all of you who are still here, thank you so much for stopping by, and hope